Hi, I'm Andrew Berry and welcome to At the Bench's YouTube channel. I'm making this film for a lady who is part of a Facebook group here in the UK. And the problem was she had made up a ring, a really heavy, I think it was a gent's ring, and she shaped the ring and then she soldered it and then was worried about how the joint would withstand the reshaping the ring after she soldered it when she taps it on her mandrel. Now, I must admit I was quite harsh and quite short in my reply to her, and I do apologize for that. But I see it all the time. I see it all the time in jewelry making books, and I see lots of people being taught this way. Whilst there in theory is nothing wrong with it, in practice it is not a good way to shape the ring when you come to solder it closed. And I'll go through the reason why, and I'll show you the various ways we can sort of work around that and make a proper solder joint with the most minimal amount of fuss and stress on the joint. The method that a lot of people are taught, and I said the jewelry books show it, is this type of method. You get the band and you want to join the ends together absolutely perfectly parallel, and the books will tell you to make it in this sort of shape that we've got here. The joint is on the top here, and they make the ring, it doesn't have to be round, they say, but make it with a nice flat top as we've got there, so you can ensure you get a nice flat seam. And you can see it's not round at all, it's nowhere near round. And whilst you can get a gorgeous joint across the top, and whilst you can get the edges lovely and parallel and straight and smooth and get the joint absolutely perfect, the problem is when you go to try and tap this around on your mandrel or on your ring stick. For a start, if you did this, there's no way that is going to fit on the end of your mandrel. So you're going to have to try and force it over or get your pliers on the inside just to try and shape it. And by putting the metal pliers onto the metal that you're using, you're putting marks into it. And I was trying to keep those marks to a minimum, because every mark you put into the metal, you've got to try and get them out. And I don't like this way, because if the metal was a lot thicker, and this was the case with the Facebook lady, she was worried about her joints. The metal was very, very thick, and she was worried that when she started to tap it around upon the mandrel, the joint here would actually split because of the stress that is put upon the joint. So my argument is, don't do this to the rings when you solder it. Make it so the ring comes completely round as possible before you solder it, because once you have soldered that joint, the ring has the most minimal amount of shaping, and you put the most minimal amount of stress on that joint. Okay, so if we did it with this band and the joint snapped, it's no problem. We can simply make sure the joint and those surfaces are lovely smooth and parallel and resolder it. But that's twice the amount of work. So why do it in this way? I've got some thick pieces of silver here, and I'm going to show you perhaps 3 ways. I've got 2 pieces of equipment that will help me, 3 pieces of silver here, and this film is purely just about shaping the metal. We're going to do it by hand, and I've got 2 pieces of equipment that will shape it. But that isn't the end of it. There is another way to ensure that these ends come together gorgeous and parallel. And what you want to do is, where the metal comes around to join, you don't want the metal straight. You want the metal curved. All right? So where the join, where you cut the ends are continuing that curve. So when they come together, that curve will continue. When you solder it, tap it round, minimal amount of stress on that joint, which is great. The problem that you've got, again, the books teach you, and a lot of people will teach you, to get a piece of metal, mark off the length that you need, and there are tables. We've got them here on At The Bench, atthebench.com, our online jewelry training website. Just thought I'd get that in. In the resources section, click up above, download, it's the ring blank sizes table, because as the thickness of the metal increases, the length of metal has to get longer to accommodate a particular finger size. And it's all contained here. We've got the thickness of the metal across the top, finger size down the side here, and all the corresponding sizes that we need. So for instance, for argument's sake, say you look on the table here and we want to make, it's 2mm thick silver, I think, was it 2.5? Let me have a look. It's 2.6mm. So you come down on the table, you find 2.6mm, you come down and say you want to cut it 65mm. A lot of people will come along and perhaps order a piece of metal that is 65mm in length, or they will get a piece of silver and they will cut it to 65mm. No, don't do that, because when you come to bend and shape the ends of the wire, you are never going to get a gorgeous curl right on the end where you have cut, because it'll come along and then that little section where you can't quite grab it with your half round pliers will be straight. So again, when you solder it, you're going to be putting stress when you tap it round afterwards. So don't cut it. If you're ordering a piece of metal from a bullion dealer, order perhaps 5mm on either end, a little bit longer. You'd always charge your customer for that total length of silver or total length of gold anyway, so you're not losing any money. In fact, you're gaining it because you're keeping the little bits that you do cut off at the end. So 65mm, don't do it. I would mark off on the strip your 65mm. Haven't got a problem with that. So for argument's sake, I'll mark off on here 65mm. This bit of silver here is in the region of 75. So let's mark off 65. So I'll put a mark about 5mm in from the one end, come along 65mm, and that is going to make me a specific finger size. So those are my marks I've got on there. Do not cut them. What we're going to do next is bend this piece of metal around, and this is the problem. If the metal is thick, it's going to be very hard to get that gorgeous even curl, the curvature of that ring straight off. So I'm going to take the cameras into various parts of my studio here and downstairs to show you the various ways that we can shape that thick piece of metal. If you have been doing this jewelry making for years and years and years like I have, what you can always do is simply get your mandrel like this, put it in place and start to hammer it with a rawhide mallet. That's fine, that's no problem, because you've got a lot of strength in your left hand. You can grab a pair of half round pliers, and again, got the strength in your hands. If you're built like Arnie, a bit like me, and you can just put those on the in the pliers, my wire there, and just turn it around. If you do that, what you don't want to do is start to grab it at one end like that and keep bending and bending and bending and bending and bending till you come around to this end, because you can't really hold on to this little bit whilst you are bending it round. So a little trick, and I'm going to do this with both pieces of equipment that I'm going to show you as well, is doing this by hand, is bend it on the one end until you get a slight curvature coming on this end. And before you go any further, you're going to turn the metal over and you're going to start to bend it on the other end. So you're going to get a piece of metal that's going to be curled at this end and curled at that end. That will ensure the ends of the metal are nice and evenly curved. Then you can go about the rest of the metal to try and curl that around so it comes round. And the idea is you want these ends now to overlap, to go past each other. Then when you look down on top, you should see those 65mm marks that we have just marked, hopefully lining up across the top. That is when we cut the metal to length and not before. So as I said, we can grab this with a pair of half rounds and simply grab it into the jaws there and use your power to turn that around, because where we've marked it at 65mm here, it's starting to be a nice gentle curve. You're never going to get the metal to curve right on the end. That is why we leave a little bit extra on both ends. Right, before I go any further, I'm going to take these other pieces of metal into my other parts of the studio to show the other pieces of equipment, to show you the best way to make these pieces of wire round. Don't forget to take your metal, Andrew. So I've got two brands of heavy shank bender. We've got this one here, this is a Pepe, and we've also got a Durston one as well. Oops, Daisy. Exactly the same type of machine, works on exactly the same principle. They both fasten into a vise. They've also got holes within the plate here that enables us to screw this to a bench. It's got interchangeable dies. These are little Delrin stakes that we've got here. We can change them for different sizes. This is the diameter of what we want the ring to be. And also it's got corresponding metal dies as well that will go into the slot there. And also it does have the Delrin. Delrin's pretty good because it won't really impart any marks upon the metal. So very, very easy. All you got to do is turn the handle, and by doing that, it simply forces out this rod that we've got by here. So we put the metal in, and again, don't forget that even though we've got this pushing the metal, it is very rarely going to start, I'll turn it around this way to show you, it's very rarely going to start to put the curve right onto the very, very end. That is always why we always have that little bit extra that we can cut off. So you put it into the die, you put it perhaps flush onto the base plate as you've got there, and you simply push the handle. As you push the handle, it pushes this rod out, hold that in place, and it will start to bend. So you can carry on bending it with your hand, or put it forward and bend. Okay, and we can keep on going round and round. You can see how that first little piece there is not curved. Once you've got it so far, you can come around to this side and do exactly the same thing on here. Put it round, and as you keep on going forward about 3 or 4 millimeters, you can see how the metal is going round and round. Keep doing it evenly from both ends, and that will make sure that your metal will take on a most gorgeous, gorgeous curve round and around. You can turn it around into the next side, and you just keep on going, and then the ends then are going to overlap. So you can simply move those apart like that and keep on going, and they will just simply overlap. $3mm wire, beautiful and round. And when we come to cut this across, you can see how the ring is round. So when we come to solder it, you will hardly need any shaping of that ring at all. All right then, let's go and show you my other piece of equipment that will enable us to do this type of procedure. Here's our other piece of equipment. This is a heavy shank bender, and again, this is going to enable us to turn this 3mm thick wire so easily. We have a handle here that turns this offset stepped mandrel, and in the bottom we've got corresponding set of dies. You can get these in a Delrin, like a plastic as well. And the idea is very, very simple. You put the metal into the gap here, you move the handle towards you, and as you move the handle towards you, it forces the mandrel, like I should say, downwards, and it forces the metal into the dies. And again, exactly the same way as before, you would simply put the metal in, you would bring that down, you would start to bend that metal. So you've got a slight bend. Again, you can see you cannot get right to the very, very end. So the ends are always going to be straight. Pop that in. Let's move it into the big one. There we go. And you can carry on twisting this, moving the wire round and round. Again, what I would do, you'd get so far on the one end, you simply put the wire in on the other end, and you start to bend that as well. And as you come round, make sure now that the ends overlap. Thread that back on. Again, keep on moving the handle, pushing the metal down. As you can see with this one, it does mark, and we can make it slightly smaller, it does mark the outside of the silver because of this bottom stake is metal. So likewise, you would turn it round until you get a nice even shape. And again, you'd have your marks upon the top that you've measured to your 65. You'd make sure that they come across exactly the same. If they don't, pop that upon the mandrel just to expand it, or keep on going on the dies down here just to make that a little bit smaller. But as you can see now, again, we've got that gorgeous, if I can get it into shot, there we go. We've got that gorgeous round ring shape, nice and easy. But you're saying, Andrew, I don't have access to this type of equipment. All I've got is a hammer and a mandrel. No problem at all. Let's go back upstairs and I can quickly show you how we can use a mandrel and a rawhide mallet to shape the ring. So we've got our two rings nicely rounded using our pieces of equipment. So the next method is simply brute force and ignorance. So we've got a mandrel or a ring stick, as this one is here. I've also got a vise, and you can put the mandrel in the vise. You've got there. Here's our little piece of silver, and again, using the same technique as we did with these two rings, you would simply hammer the metal. Don't hammer it downwards this way because you're going to push the mandrel downwards, but try and hit it from the side so this ring stick or mandrel is not going to go anywhere. And what I'd always do again is bend that first half as we've got there and come along with this one and start to bend that as well. And by doing that, you can get your wire that is going to come along nice and even to come all the way around. And once you've got it so far, you can use your fingers to make this nice and round. Carry on hammering, and you can basically bring this upon the mandrel wherever you want it, whatever size ring you were doing. And once you've got your 65mm marks, as we've been using throughout this demonstration, where they come across the top of here, you would stop and you would make sure now that the ring is the right size, and also the ring is nicely rounded, as you can see. So by simply using a mandrel and a rawhide mallet, we've made the ring round. By using the other pieces of equipment we've got here, we've made the rings nice and round. So as you can see, there is no reason for you to be doing this. It is not good. It is not good practice. Always try and get the rings going round, 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 round. Easy. And in our next film, I will then show you how we're going to cut this metal, and then we're going to solder it and show you then just simply shaping up the bands. So, in summary, you have your piece of metal. You have a set length of what that piece of metal has to be. Don't have it exactly that length. Have it that little bit extra on the ends by about 5mm or something like that, because as you can see, when we either use the machine to shape or even do it by hand, the end does not get bent. So what we would be doing is cutting those end pieces off to ensure that when the metal comes round, it'll come around in a gorgeous, beautiful, nice, simple arc. So when we come to solder it and when we come to tap it round, you're going to put the most minimal amount of stress on that joint. Do it this way, there's a chance that your joint is going to crack, it's going to fracture. And even some of these cracks, you're going to cause, the joint is going to cause cracks and stresses and fractures within the joint. So you may even get it round with no problem at all, but that isn't to say that it's not going to break in the near future. Distant future? Yeah, the near future. So the less stress you can put on a solder joint, and especially if you're not really 100% with your soldering and you are still a bit unsure, you must try and get that solder joint absolutely perfect, which I'll show you in the next film. And if you can put that joint under the least amount of stress, the stronger that joint will be on the ring. So that's a quickish sort of film on showing you how we can tap the heavy, thick metal around by using the machinery that we have, or even just simply by using a mandrel rawhide mallet and putting the mandrel, the ring stick, in a vise. Oh, and before you go, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I'd love you to. Like this film, share it with your friend, give us the thumbs up. Have anything to say? Love you to write it in the comment section down below. See you next time. Bye-bye.